Advent is a season that I love very deeply, a season that often gets swallowed up by our Christmas celebrations, the carol services and the singing and all the Christmas parties and dinners and things that happen before Christmas itself comes. Advent kind of disappears. And yet this serious season of preparation is so valuable. It speaks so powerfully to the state that we see around us, the situations that we confront day by day. It recognizes the darkness in our world. But it also speaks of hope. And it's, I think, to many of us, a season of hope. Christmas is a season of Christ, of our focus on his reality, his incarnation, his presence with us. But before we come to Christmas, let's celebrate this and mark this season of hope. And of course, it's hope sometimes in the face of hopelessness, of possible despair. We light our peace candle Sunday by Sunday, a tradition that has been given to us by our sister church at Cross End. They've been doing it for many more years than Trinity, but we've been doing it since COVID times. The world hasn't become more peaceful, it's become more violent in many places. I suppose in a way Syria slipped out of our minds for a while, but of course it was bubbling away. There are so many conflicts that we kind of forget about as we focus on Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East. Hope is often surprising. God brings us hope in the midst of times when we feel hopeless. Jeremiah, we think of Jeremiah as the prophet of tears. And you read chapters 1 to 30, and it's pretty dark stuff. And then the light comes. And he speaks of hope. He speaks of this promise that God hasn't abandoned his people, hasn't abandoned them. And he will build a new relationship and bring hope. Well, you all recognize this tree. It was, so we now speak RIP, it's a sycamore tree. You know, sycamore trees we dig them up all the time. I've got numerous sycamore trees in the front garden. The manse has a very big front garden, and it has probably 4 or 5 sycamore trees. And potentially the whole manse garden could be one sycamore grove without difficulty. They grow at times like weeds. And yet this tree became so iconic, partly through a film, good old Robin Hood, of course, another myth, but also just people loved it. They walked and saw this perfectly placed tree in this gap, the sycamore gap and the sycamore tree. And some very stupid people came and chopped it down. I don't know if they've been prosecuted yet or not. I think it's an ongoing case, so we cannot possibly comment on that. And there it is, chopped down. And you think of so many other places where things that are full of life have been just chopped down. You'll send in a missile or two, or a suicide bomber, or whatever. The senselessness of human action. But out of that trees felling, well, there was a whole wave of grief, not just in this country, but across the world. How can we just grieve so much, just one tree? So many people are dying in our world. But it's symbolic. People will attach things. We grieve over the way nature, so many trees in Buckinghamshire have been cut down. Noble old trees for this strange project called HS2, the most crazy project ever. But out of this has grown not just grief, but hope. The National Trust has instigated a project called Trees of Hope. And saplings have been taken from the tree and then are being gifted to people and groups and organisations across the UK to spread a positive message. The 49 saplings represent each foot in height that the tree was at the time when it was cut down. The trees are being cared for by the National Trust Plant Conservation Centre. Have you heard about that one? And should be strong enough and ready to plant next winter. And the National Trust has chosen 49 important causes that will receive a sapling or small tree. They'll be going to a local school, the Tree Sanctuary, and the 15 national parks in the UK, the Rob Burrow Centre of Motor Neurone Disease in Leeds will be receiving a tree as well. Andrew Pode from the National Trust. The tree meant so much to so many, and through the Trees of Hope initiative, we are helping reach people across the nation for generations to come. Jeremiah speaks of hope, of a righteous branch that will sprout from David's line. The tree had been chopped down. The leadership of Israel at that time had been taken into exile. Jerusalem had been destroyed. But Jeremiah speaks of God not abandoning his people. A righteous branch shall sprout, this new life that comes. And of course, for Christians, that new life is focused in Jesus. He is that sprout, that new life of the tree growing up not just for his own Jewish people, but for all nations, Jews and Gentiles alike. So be ready to be surprised by the hope that God brings. Hope that emerges from the darkest of times. And look for hope. Look for those signs. Jesus speaks of warning signs, and humanity is not always good at reading the warning signs. People talking about climate change, oh, that's just a fad, that's just woke or whatever. This is a reality, and many, many millions of people are already being affected by extreme climate events. We need to watch and look for the signs that warn. Jesus is ready to warn us, but also the signs of hope. Jesus speaks about a fig tree. There's a fig tree. And you watch for those little buds beginning to emerge and expand. The season of God's hope is emerging. And then finally, we need to nurture hope. We need to be careful of the hope that God gives us and not just throw it away. Because there's no one so foolish as humanity. The other animals seem a lot wiser than us. We can so easily throw away the hope that God gives us. And so Jesus says, be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness. Well, oh dear, we might all be doing a bit of that. And the anxieties of life. And that day will close on you suddenly like a trap. Jesus wanted to guard us both from indulging, just going into escapism. I can't face reality, so let's just drink ourselves to death instead, or drugs, or buying more, or retail therapy, or all the kind of addictive things that at times big business manipulates us. Oh, let's just scroll let's just the phone one more time and scroll down and look at a few more websites. And Jesus said, guard yourself from all that. Don't get caught up in all that nonsense. And also guard yourself from anxiety, from getting so caught up in all the depressing gloom merchants that you forget the hope. I love this picture. It's linked to a tree bathing. I don't know if any of you have done any tree bathing, but it's a Japanese custom, and it's got some difficult words that I can't say. It's Shirin-yoku is a formal forest bathing. But it's sort of, King Charles is into hugging trees, isn't he? So just sort of absorb nature. Nurture hope. And I think there's no better place to recognize hope than in the world of nature. And the story of Jesus. Be always on your watch. Be careful. Guard and nurture the hope Jesus has given us. And part of how we do that is through our sharing at communion. And so we come to this table that in these very simple, natural gifts of bread and the juice of grapes, our hope will be refreshed for the days to come. Amen.